Hello friends, welcome to today's lecture on question banks. We'll do question banks from UWorld. So let's start. A 12-year-old boy is brought to the office by his mother due to headaches and gait instability. His symptoms began several months ago and have progressively worsened. MRI of the brain is shown in the image below. Now, which of the following is the most likely diagnosis? So the answer to this question is pilocytic astrocytoma. Now this slide presents to you the patient's MRI and the normal MRI. I have added the normal MRI so that you can compare the characteristics of the normal MRI with the abnormal one. Now the area below the corpus callosum is dense, always appears dense due to the presence of ventricles which are CSF fluid spaces. Whereas in the child or in the patient's MRI, we can also see that there is well circumscribed mass in the cerebellum, which is not present in the normal MRIs. So here there is a cystic component as well as the solid component, therefore indicating pilocytic astrocytoma present in the patient. Brain tumors are the second most common childhood cancer after leukemia and the most common solid organ tumors of childhood. This child with a heterogeneous, well circumscribed cerebral mass most likely has a pilocytic astrocytoma, the most common type of brain tumor in children. Pilocytic astrocytomas are low grade gliomas that occur most frequently in the cerebellum. Patients typically have headaches and cerebellar findings, example loss of balance in coordination, and the imaging as shown in the previous slide reveals a well demarcated lesion comprised of cystic and solid components. Microscopic examination shows pilocytic astrocytes with bundles of glial fibrillary acidic protein or GFAP positive hair-like processes and classic Rosenthal fibers that are eosinophilic intercytoplasmic inclusions. Due to the slow growing nature, the majority of patients can be treated with surgical resection and have a favorable prognosis. The other choices were incorrect, as in choice A. Ependymomas are rare tumors arising from the ependymal lining of the ventricle. They commonly occupy the fourth ventricle and can cause hydrocephalus by obstructing the flow of CSF. Perivascular pseudorosettes are present on microscopy. In choice B, glioblastoma multiforme, a tumor arising from GFAP positive astrocytes, occur most frequently in adults and is typically located within the cerebral hemispheres, often crossing the corpus callosum. Pseudopalisading pleomorphic cells with areas of necrosis are seen on microscopy. In choice C, medulloblastoma is the most common malignant childhood brain cancer. It is located exclusively in the cerebellum. However, it is not cystic like pilocytic astrocytoma. Imaging only reveals a solid lesion that can compress the fourth ventricle, causing hydrocephalus. It is composed of small cells with hyperchromatic nuclei that form Homer-right rosettes, that is, grouping of cells surrounding the neuropil. In choice D, oligodendrogliomas, rare in children, are frequently calcified, well circumscribed masses located in the frontal lobe. Microscopy shows uniform cells with a fried egg appearance, that is, round nuclei with clear cytoplasm surrounded by anastomosing capillaries arranged in a chicken wire pattern. So this slide demonstrates the Rosenthal fibers, which are eosinophilic intercytoplasmic inclusions that are common in the histopathological finding for pilocytic astrocytoma. Now this slide presents a pseudorosette, which is a perivascular radial arrangement of neoplastic cells around a small blood vessel. Thus it is known as perivascular pseudorosette. This is typical for ependymomas. Rosette is a palisade in a hollow or spoke and wheel arrangement like this. Now this slide demonstrates the pseudopalisading pleomorphic cells with areas of necrosis. Here are the areas of necrosis, and these are the pseudopericyding pleomorphic cells. This is typical for glioblastoma multiforme. Now this slide presents the MRI of medulloblastoma, exclusively located in the cerebellum, and it has only solid lesion which can compress the fourth ventricle and can cause hydrocephalus. Unlike pilocytic astrocytoma, it does not have any cystic component. Now this slide presents to you the microscopic feature of oligodendrogliomas. This shows uniform cells with a fried egg appearance, that is round nuclei with clear cytoplasm and anastomosing capillaries which are arranged in chicken wire pattern. Now in this question, a 53-year-old female treated with high-dose folic acid for anemia experiences a moderate increase in her hemoglobin level. She returns to clinic complaining of bilateral foot numbness and difficulty in walking. The latter symptoms are most likely related to which of the following? So in this question, the patient's neurological symptoms of bilateral foot numbness and difficulty in walking are persistent even after folic acid treatment. This suggests of vitamin B12 deficiency anemia to be treated with folic acid. Thus the answer is cobalamin deficiency. The clinical decision to treat this patient with folic acid suggests that her anemia was megaloblastic and therefore likely secondary to a deficiency of vitamin B12 or folate. Her subsequent development of neurological symptoms, a finding not associated with folate deficiency alone, indicates that she is deficient in vitamin B12. A moderate improvement in the hemoglobin level often occurs when a deficiency in vitamin B12 is treated with folate or vice versa. However, the treatment of vitamin B12 deficiency with folate will not reverse any neurological dysfunction caused by the vitamin B12 deficiency. In fact, the usage of folate can worsen demyelination and cause abnormal myelin synthesis by depleting the concentration of unmethylated cobalamin which are available for methylmalonyl CoA processing. The working difficulties in paresthesias seen in this patient were therefore likely precipitated by the administration of folate alone. The other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, high doses of folate may antagonize phenytoin, thereby precipitating seizures in a selected group of patients. Walking difficulties and paresthesias are not typically associated with folate overdose, however, and thus the answer was incorrect. And choice B, iron deficiency is characterized by a hypochromic microcytic anemia that is best treated with iron supplementation. Walking difficulties and paresthesias are not typically associated with iron deficiency anemia, thus it was incorrect. In choices D and E, anemia of any cause can provoke non-specific neurologic symptoms like tinnitus, irritability, and generalized weakness. Walking difficulties and paresthesias are not commonly associated with hemolysis or aplastic anemia, however, and thus it was also inappropriate. In summary, deficiency of vitamin B12 is associated with both megaloblastic anemia and neurological dysfunction, while folate deficiency is only associated with megaloblastic anemia. Moderate improvement in the hemoglobin level often occurs when a deficiency in vitamin B12 is treated with folate or vice versa. Treatment of vitamin B12 deficiency with folate alone can actually worsen neurologic dysfunction. In this question, a 65-year-old man comes to the office due to 4 months of worsening fatigue. The patient feels tired with simple household works. He has a 15-pack-year smoking history and drinks 2 to 3 beers daily. Temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Blood pressure is 134 upon 86 mmHg. Pulse is 76 per minute. Physical examination reveals late systolic ejection murmur with soft S2. The lungs are clear to auscultate. The abdomen is soft and non-tender with no hepatosplenomegaly. There are no focal neurological deficits. Lab test reveals hemoglobin to be 9 gram per deciliter and mean corpuscular volume is 93 micrometer cube. Peripheral blood smear is shown below. Which of the following best explains the observed erythrocyte findings in this patient? Since in the previous we have seen that the peripheral blood smear contains the Rowlatt's formation that is indicative for multiple myeloma, and thus the most explainable of this finding will be increased serum paraproteins. Now this patient's peripheral blood smear shows rows of erythrocytes stacked to one another like coins, that is the Rowlatt's formation. This occurs due to elevated levels of circulating proteins which disrupts the repulsive electrostatic charge on the erythrocyte surface and causes stacked aggregation. Although Rowlatt's formation can be seen with inflammatory conditions, example infection, rheumatic disease that increase acute phase reactants, example fibrinogen, it is classically linked to lymphoproliferative or plasma cell disorders such as multiple myeloma and Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia, which generate high levels of monoclonal paraprotein that are immunoglobulins. Multiple myeloma is a plasma cell malignancy often associated with normocytic anemia, osteolytic bone lesions, and hypercalcemia due to proliferation of neoplastic cells in the bone marrow. Patients also frequently have renal insufficiency due to immunoglobulin light chain cast nephropathy and non-specific symptoms like fatigue. Elevated circulating levels of monoclonal immunoglobulin cause Rowlatt's formation in greater than 50% of cases. Diagnosis is generally made using serum or urine protein electrophoresis, where we can see monoclonal M spike and bone marrow biopsy. Other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, chronic GI blood loss is a leading cause of iron deficiency anemia, which usually results in microcytosis and hypochromia on peripheral blood smear, sometimes with target cells. Rowlatt's formation is not a typical feature and normocytic anemia is uncommon, therefore it was not appropriate. In choice B, cold agglutinins are cross-reactive IgM antibodies that form with some infections, particularly Mycoplasma pneumoniae and hematologic malignancies. Cold agglutinins typically cause clumping agglutination, not stacked coin agglutination, and intravascular hemolysis, thus it was not correct. In choice D, mechanical erythrocyte injury is common in patients with damaged or artificial heart valves. Although this patient has a cardiac murmur that indicates possible aortic stenosis, mechanical erythrocyte injury is usually associated with schistocytes on peripheral blood smear and not the Rowlatt's formation, and thus it was inappropriate. In choice E, vitamin B12 deficiency causes abnormal hematologic cell nuclear maturation, which leads to macrocytic anemia and hypersegmented neutrophils on peripheral blood smears and not the Rowlatt's formation, hence it was not appropriate. Now, a 56-year-old man comes to the office due to several months of progressive neck swelling. He also had intermittent epistaxis and headaches. The patient has no chronic medical conditions and takes no medication, does not use tobacco, alcohol, or illicit drugs, and is immigrated to the US from rural China 12 years ago. Physical examination shows several enlarged, firm, and non-tender cervical lymph nodes. Nasopharyngeal evaluation reveals a mass arising from the pharyngeal recess. Histopathological examination of the mass shows undifferentiated malignant cells of epithelial origin. Further analysis of the cells is most likely to reveal the presence of nucleic acid sequences from which of the following viruses. Now, the patient has nasopharyngeal cancer, which is endemic in southern China due to some genetic and dietary factors, and this produce or promote nasopharyngeal epithelial pre-malignant lesions. In almost all cases, the malignant transformation occurs due to infection of the pre-malignant cells with Epstein-Barr virus, and thus the subsequent expression will be for Epstein-Barr virus oncogenic proteins. The nasopharyngeal carcinoma is an epithelial tumor that usually originates in the pharyngeal recess. Local tumor growth often leads to epistaxis and headaches, and metastatic spread to cervical lymph nodes, which cause firm, fixed neck swelling. NPC is relatively uncommon in the US but is endemic to southern China, where genetic and dietary factors like consumption of salted fish predispose to pre-malignant nasopharyngeal epithelial lesions. Subsequent malignant transformation is then induced by Epstein-Barr virus. It is a ubiquitous human herpes virus that causes infectious mononucleosis in a minority of patients. Primary infection is usually asymptomatic. Initial infection is followed by lifelong latent infection in memory B cells. While latent, the EBV genome exists as an episome in the nucleus of infected cells and express a restricted subset of EBV genes, that is the latency genes, which do the following. First, it promotes the periodic viral reactivation from memory B cells, leading to recurrent or asymptomatic mucosal infections. Second, it promotes survival of infected memory B cells by encoding for proteins like EBNA1 or LMP1 that prevent apoptosis. In a minority of patients, these proteins are oncogenic and it leads to malignant transformation of infected B cells, example Burkitt lymphoma or Hodgkin lymphoma, or pre-malignant epithelial cells like nasopharyngeal carcinoma and salivary cancer. Individuals who do not have pre-malignant epithelial lesions are at very low risk of EBV associated epithelial cancers like nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Other choices are incorrect, as in choice A, adenovirus cause acute upper respiratory tract infections like pharyngitis, coryza, otitis media, bronchitis, or pneumonia. It is not associated with nasopharyngeal carcinoma. In choice B, coronavirus is one of the most common causes of upper respiratory tract infection, example common cold, but has no association with nasopharyngeal or other cancers. In choices C and E, cytomegalovirus and human herpes virus are also herpes viruses. As such, they cause acute infection followed by latent disease, although CMV can reactivate in immunocompromised individuals, example HIV patients or post-transplantation patients, and cause severe end organ disease like retinitis and gastroenteritis. It is not an oncogenic virus. Similarly, HHV8 reactivation also primarily occurs in immunocompromised individuals, but it is associated with Kaposi sarcoma and not the nasopharyngeal carcinoma, hence it was inappropriate. In choice F, the BK and JC viruses are members of Polyomaviridae and cause lifelong latent infections in the kidney. BK activation can cause nephropathy in renal transplant recipients, and JC virus cause progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy, primarily in patients with advanced HIV. Hence, it was not appropriate. In summary, nasopharyngeal cancer is endemic in southern China due to genetic and dietary factors that promote nasopharyngeal epithelial pre-malignant lesions. In almost all cases, malignant transformation occurs due to infection of pre-malignant cells with Epstein-Barr virus and the subsequent expression of oncogenic viral proteins. Now, in this question, a 68-year-old man comes to the office due to persistent back pain. He is a retired veteran and has not seen a doctor for many years. He smoked a pack of cigarettes daily for 36 years. His blood pressure is 145 by 80 mmHg and pulse is 88 per minute and regular. Cardiopulmonary examination is unremarkable. The abdomen is soft and non-tender. There is focal tenderness over the 10th rib and L1, L2 vertebral region. Neurologic examination is normal. Radionuclide bone imaging reveals increased activity in multiple vertebrae and ribs, corresponding to patient's painful areas. Routine radiograph shows sclerotic lesions matching the bone scan areas of increased uptake, which are highly suspicious for metastatic cancer. Which of the following additional findings is most likely to be seen in this patient? Now, the sclerotic lesions matching the bone scan areas of increased uptake demonstrates that this are the case for osteoblastic lesions of the bone and not the osteolytic lesions of the bone. The osteoblastic lesions of the bone is common in prostate cancers, so it will be nodular prostate and elevated prostate specific antigen level, whereas the osteolytic lesions would have been described as lytic lesions, and it is common in one of example as in multiple myeloma. Now this slide presents the bone metastasis. This could be due to osteoblastic lesions, they can be mixed lesions, or they can be osteolytic lesions. The osteoblastic lesions are caused due to prostate cancer, small cell lung cancer, and Hodgkin lymphoma. The osteolytic lesion is caused due to multiple myeloma, non-small cell lung cancer, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, renal cell carcinoma, and melanoma, whereas mixed is caused due to gastrointestinal cancer and breast cancer. Now, this patient with sclerotic bony metastasis most likely has prostate cancer. Imaging of bone metastasis assists in cancer diagnosis as it allows the lesion to be characterized as osteolytic or osteoblastic. Osteolytic is lucent and osteoblastic is sclerotic. Now, osteolytic is due to osteoclast stimulation, which tend to represent aggressive cancer, whereas osteoblastic is due to osteoblasts and it indicates a more indolent course. Metastatic prostate cancer commonly has osteoblastic or sclerotic bone lesions. Bone pain is a typical presentation. Other symptoms include cancer cachexia and urinary symptoms, which are not always present. Prostate cancer is the most common non-skin cancer in men, and African American men are at higher risk. An irregular prostate gland or on digital rectal examination is suggestive of the diagnosis, which is then confirmed by biopsy. The prostate specific antigen tumor marker is commonly elevated. Other options were incorrect, as in choice A, hematuria and polycythemia due to erythropoietin release are suggestive of renal cell cancer, and the renal cell cancer bone metastases are commonly osteolytic. In choice B, monoclonal immunoglobulin spikes are found in multiple myeloma. Myeloma cells suppress osteoblast and would cause osteolytic lesions, which are not present in this patient, and hence it was not correct. In choice C, elevated parathyroid hormone related peptide levels can occur with non-small cell lung cancer, which are associated with symptoms of hypercalcemia and osteolytic bone lesions. Thus, it was also not correct. In choice D, lymphadenopathy and BCL2 overexpressions are found in lymphomas. BCL2 is an anti-apoptotic factor, and overexpression plays a role in resistance to chemotherapy. And the common manifestations of lymphoma include night sweats, weight loss, and fatigue, and therefore it was not appropriate. In choice F, a rapidly enlarging irregular mole is suggestive of melanoma. The liver, bone, and brain are the most common metastatic sites, and the melanoma causes lytic bone lesions, not the blastic bone lesions or the sclerotic bone lesions, and therefore it was also not appropriate. Now, in this question, a 55-year-old Caucasian male is found on colonoscopy to have a solitary mass in his sigmoid colon. Biopsy is consistent with colon cancer and surgery is scheduled. Which of the following features would carry the worst prognosis in this patient? Now, the worst prognosis in tumors are usually based on the metastasis, that how much tissues or cells has been invaded by the cancer, and therefore the worst prognosis here would be tumor penetration into the muscularis propria. Now, the extent of tumor expansion is characterized by the stage of a tumor. The degree of tumor differentiation from well differentiated to anaplastic is referred to as the grade. Tumor stage is the most important criteria for determining prognosis. If the tumor is confined to the mucosa, that is stage A, the patient has 90% plus chance for 5-year survival. If it involves the muscular layer, that is stage B, 5-year survival is 70 to 80%. Lymph node involvement, that is stage C, and distant metastasis, that is stage D, have poor prognosis. Other options were incorrect, as in choice A. Colon adenocarcinomas tend to be asymptomatic at early stages, which is why screening colonoscopies are so important. By the time symptoms appear, tumor size is substantial. Clinical manifestations, however, do not correlate as well as with prognosis as the stage of an adenocarcinoma does, and thus it was not appropriate. In choices C, D, and E, tumor cell differentiation, degree of aneuploidy, and number of mitotic figures determines the grade of the tumor. Remember that stage is the more important factor for determining the prognosis than the grade, and therefore they are all inappropriate. In summary, prognosis of colorectal adenocarcinoma is directly related to the stage of the tumor and not the grade. This is all for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe and share.